A little while ago now, I spent a Friday night playing Magic with some friends, and one of those people included base deck department. At the end of the night, he said he wanted to play another game, only this one wasn't Commander. He pulled out a deck box and said if we guessed the Commander, we could keep the deck. So I'm going to show you what the deck is. Base deck department is a massive Golgari enjoyer, and I just happened to guess Baba Lysaga, so that's what we're talking about today. He explained that it's been a while since he's played the deck and he wanted to give it a new home, and it was only a $50 budget deck. As someone that comes from the esports industry, a budget deck is something I've never really been interested in, as I've always worried that it wasn't as competitive or as well tuned as it could have been, and I'm just a naturally competitive person. I thought that by building budget decks, I was always going to get the worst version of cards and that I really wasn't playing the optimal lines, but now I think this deck has kind of changed my opinion on that. Let me explain to you what Baba Lysaga does. She reads, tap, sacrifice up to 3 permanents. If there are 3 or more card types among the sacrifice permanents, each opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life, and you draw 3 cards. This deck cares about draining your opponents, keeping your hand full, and topping you up on life whenever you get low. Its deep complexity honestly shocked me the first few times I played it, and one of my friends described it as trying to solve a puzzle with your permanents. Base deck department is an incredible deck builder and someone you should absolutely look up to for advice on deck building and commander philosophy. So I asked him why did he build this deck and what his thoughts were behind it.
A year ago, my playgroup did a bunch of budget deck building challenges, a practice that I really can't recommend highly enough. But in relation to Babal Saga, I'd seen Joey Schultz from the EDH Rec podcast talk about his Babal Saga deck, or as he calls it, his baby lasagna deck. I knew his deck was like most commander decks in that it cost a few $100s, but as a lifelong fan of the Golgari color pairing, and in relation to our budget challenge, I posed myself the challenge to see if I could make a good Baba deck for $50. I was and still am very happy with this deck. The low budget forced me to look up obscure cards that would make the deck work, and it's one of those decks where you play a card and the table goes, what the hell does that do? Purely because that's a card that has a wild drawback that either doesn't affect you or you benefit from. It just has tons of synergy. More expensive Baba decks work by utilizing the graveyard extensively and replaying cards over and over to generate value, but I didn't have the budget or luxury for that, so I focused on cards that generate multiple permanents instead, especially if they gave me multiple permanent types and tokens to synergize with a commander's ability. If I had to do a deck tech on it now, I imagine I would streamline things a tiny bit, and I'd probably swap in a land or two and ensure that I have enough of the vegetables like removal and protection. But those would be very minor changes. I think 90% of the deck would likely remain the same because of some of the really fantastic interactions between the cards. I imagine the interaction between the cards and the cards themselves is what you want to talk about, so I'll leave that to you.
Alright, let me show you some of the cards that I like. This first one is an enchantment aura called Instill Energy, and I thought this one was really interesting with Baba Lysaga because obviously it lets you untap another creature. It reads, you may untap target creature 1 additional time during your turn. Target creature may also attack the turn it comes into play. This card's really cool because it can obviously give Baba Lysaga haste, and plus untapping means you're going to get mega value for a 1 mana aura. The second one is also another 1 mana aura, and it's called Nature's Chosen. Same as Instill Energy, it just gives you the ability to untap your creature an additional time, which is so much value on Baba Lysaga. I know the text is pretty small, but the second line also allows you to tap the creature it's enchanted with to untap another creature. So theoretically, you could play this card as early as turn 1 or 2, and then by the time you're able to tap Baba Lysaga, whatever this is enchanted to, you can then tap to untap Baba Lysaga, so it's kind of extra value. These enchantments are something you probably don't really see in Commander games very often, but because of Baba Lysaga's ability to sacrifice enchantments, it just has the ability to get rid of the downsides so easily, so I'll show you what these two do. The first one is Treacherous Blessing, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, so for 3 mana, draw 3 cards, that's still pretty awesome, but its downsides are that you lose life every time you play a creature, and then when it comes to target of a spell or ability, it gets sacrificed. Similar to the last one, when the Demonic Law enters the battlefield, you get to draw 3 cards, which is great. However, this one's downside is pretty crazy. At the beginning of your end step, you lose 2 life each card in your hand, so when this one does come into play, you definitely want to be sacking it before your end step with Baba Lysaga, otherwise you might cop a bit of damage for that one. The removal suite in this deck is pretty interesting, as a lot of the cards that have similar downsides to Tragic Slip, where it's not a very good card on its own, but when used in combination with Baba Lysaga's ability, it can be a lot more powerful for super cheap. Tragic Slip's a great example because it gives -1 to a creature until end of turn, so that's pretty average on its own. But its Morbid ability gives it -13 to end of turn if a creature died this turn. So really you're holding this up with the Baba Lysaga, hoping that you do sack a creature, and when you do, Tragic Sip becomes way more powerful in your hand. In a similar sense, this card Viridian Emissary has a lot of value for ramp on a permanent as well. So the way that it works is that when it's put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield. So really you're playing this on turn 2. If you're lucky enough to sack this on turn 3, you're ramping out, and it maybe works a little better than a Farseek given you can sack it to your commander. The final card I want to talk about is Not Dead After All. I just think this card is cracked in any single deck that runs black because it's such good commander protection. But the really important part about this one is that it does give a Wicked Roll token when that creature does die, and then that Wicked Roll token is just another enchantment you can sack to Babal Saga, so it's just so much value. So yeah, that's definitely some of my favorite cards from the deck. But yeah, I will link Base Deck Department's video in the description because he really goes into detail about why he built this deck. But now that I am the new owner of it, I wanted to share it as well. I really suck at building budget commander decks, so if you do have one that you really enjoy or you have a commander you want to recommend me, please, I'm all ears. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, thank you for making it this far, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.